Hello and welcome to Let's Talk, and my guest tonight is Kate O'Hanlon, who is an educational psychologist, and in this episode she talks about discovering psychology for the first time. Welcome to the show, and this is Let's Talk, and my guest today is Kate O'Hanlon, who is an educational psychologist. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you.
Again, what I normally do with these little things is interviews is to capture part of history of what people are doing. So it's interesting people that I'm sort of talking to, and the psychology is something that's really important. So tell me a little bit about how did it get started for you into psychology?
I know exactly when it happened for me. And it was in the early 80s, and it was in the month of January when I got the flu. And it was the first time I'd ever taken to bed for something as simple as that. And I was in bed for about a week. And during that time, I read psychology books. I had them, all right, but never read them. And I was also at that time at a turning point because I was beginning to think I had been teaching in various places. I'd been in Nigeria, I'd been in Kent, and then at this stage I was working in Uri, and began to think I couldn't teach at all. That it was me that was the problem. These children, especially the challenging ones, didn't seem to be moving along. So when I had the flu, I had all these psychology books, and I found them completely fascinating. I wondered how I'd spent my life not knowing about psychology. After the week, I immediately applied to do a psychology degree. And I did do several psychology degrees after that. But what I learned was that I was teaching children, not English. That was, I think, the first thing suddenly came to mind. It was a simple thing, but I hadn't thought of that before. And these children of all ages coming into the room to me were all different. And I needed to find out about them. I knew all about English, I knew all about history and French that I was teaching. Well, all I needed to know, in my opinion, anyway. But I didn't really know about learning and children and their thinking and so on. Psychology for me, and throughout the years since, has been a great standby. And I follow ongoing research. I'm a member of the British Psychological Society and so forth. I follow as much research as is relevant to what I do. And you're continually learning. It's a new science. So
you'd gone out to some of these other countries, and you were teaching. You knew your subject, and then when you started to learn psychology, you started to realize what was it about? It was about yourself more than the students that you began to realize that need to be educated.
Yes, it was. It was. I didn't have the skills and the knowledge. I didn't have the understanding of how to engage with a child, especially a child who's finding the learning I was putting in front of him or her difficult. I couldn't understand that. So what I was doing was I was trying to put it in front of them in different ways, in different formats, but still they weren't retaining or getting or internalizing understanding. So I pursued that then. I thought, well, I need to understand more about the learner, the brain, the mind, the emotional end of a child, all of that, which is so relevant to his ability to learn. And as the years have gone by, I have learnt more.
What kind of things did you discover? How did you approach the child to get them to learn?
Well, there are two avenues into that, I think. One is through assessment. So I learnt a lot about both psychometric assessment, how to do that and get your scores and so forth. And I learned about dynamic assessment as well, which is a way of assessing a child where you don't get a score, but where you find out from the learner how much potential he has. He doesn't, if I help him, if I engage, like Vygotsky said, as a mediator with the child, I can learn how he learns and what more he's capable of learning, rather than he wasn't able to do that.
Yes.
That's not enough. You need to find out a wee bit more.
And I'm in a classroom of students on a regular basis as well, and the first thing I want to find out is what do they know and how do they deal with information.
That's right. That is it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I like the idea of constructivism.
Yes.
In building upon the knowledge that the student
That's
has.
correct. Yep.
And it's storytelling for me, isn't it?
So it is.
What methods would you use then to build upon?
Well, one of the experiences I had shortly after I did some of the psychology degrees was I was introduced to Reuven Feuerstein and instrumental enrichment. And I won't bore you now by telling you all about instrumental enrichment, but I discovered it in July 1987. I know exactly the date and the week.
Wow. And
I learnt more again there. And Reuven Feuerstein, a clinical psychologist who worked in the 1950s in Israel when it was becoming a new nation, discovered children coming out of the prisoner of war camps who had no IQs. According to his standardised test, they couldn't score. And he couldn't understand that. How could that be? And so his work from the early 1950s right through, he died a couple of years ago, unfortunately, but his institute in Israel and all his people all over the world. And I mean, I was talking to a psychologist yesterday who's just come back from New Zealand, where there is a huge, engagement with instrumental enrichment. So what Feuerstein discovered were ways of assessing children to discover how they learned and how capable they were of learning more. So that told you, as the mediating person, how much effort you needed to put in to help this child to internalise, to understand the things you wanted them to understand. So Feuerstein did that, and he also provided an absolutely, it's a work of genius really, program which teaches children how to think.
Okay.
And it's called instrumental enrichment. I've done research in it, longitudinal research, which in schools here in the north, which demonstrated quite clearly that children who were arriving in with these scores, which were very low, both IQ and attainment, were achieving by the time they got to GCSE. Okay. And I matched those instrumental enrichment children with children like them who didn't get it. So I had a control group. Often research doesn't have a control group. It's not valid if it doesn't.
Absolutely.
You have to have that. So these children who didn't have any particular intervention apart from extra literacy and numeracy were matched against the IE children who had just IE, and they had it for 3 years, like 1 hour a week for 3 years. Then I left them and monitored them up to the end of the 3rd year, and then went back to check their attainments at GCSE, compared them to the controls. Remarkable.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.